What's going on, YouTube? Welcome to episode 157 of the U.S.S. Enterprise D tutorial. I'm Azure Elite, and I just want to thank you very much for tuning in today's episode. If you haven't, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, helping me in supporting the channel. I can't thank you enough for that. And don't forget to join the Discord. I'll have a link in the description below. Those of you that have been hoping to hop on my next ship build poll, you've missed the train on that one. My poll is now ended. And Voyager has went out. That is going to be my official next build I'm going to be doing on YouTube. I don't have a set date on when that's coming out, but that will be following the Enterprise D. We're going to be picking up on the Enterprise D where we left off in episode 156, working on the detailing on the sides of the pylons. So let's kick back, relax, and jump right into this today. We're not going to be, we've got about a 25-minute episode today. We're not going to be spending the whole episode working on this. We're actually, we'll be kind of going through this pretty quick, well, somewhat fast today. We'll be doing the registration, and then once we're done with that, we're going to be moving over and doing the torpedo launcher for the rear of the ship, and then we'll also be adjusting the torpedo launcher for the main torpedo launcher for the front of the ship. So we've definitely got just a little bit of work to get done today. Pretty much just detailing at this point, because again, you know, we've already finished the main shape of the Enterprise, so we can just kind of focus on what detail is missing and making sure that we add that detail in. You know, sometimes people will ask me, hey, how are you getting all this detail in? What did you use for reference? And again, you know, I talk about this all the time. I look for a bunch of reference pictures, just like the one that we have up right now, and I start scouring the ship for details and things that I can bring over. And when you start to identify those details, like in this case, this outline that we have on the side of our pylon and then the registration, it's like, okay, cool, that is a perfect detail that we can add over into the ship. And basically what we do is just kind of like a trial and error period. You're not going to know what something's going to look like until you add it on. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to add it on, see what it looks like. If it needs some adjustment, we'll make an adjustment for it. If the color isn't working, we'll make an adjustment to the color, which is actually, ironically enough, going to be something that we will do specifically in this area, because once everything's said and done, for this outside of the pylon, we're actually going to come back and change the color of the registration from that dark gray to yellow, because I just wanted it to have a different color to stand out just a little bit more, give us a little bit more variety of color, because you don't really see that on the Enterprise D or ships in general. Maybe it's just the artist in me kind of coming out a little bit, wanting to add that color in. Now, I can almost say that that actually is canon. I don't have the reference material, but I saw it somewhere that the Enterprise D had the yellow registration on the sides of the pylons here, and then I've seen other ones where it looks how it looks now, where it's black. I think in cases like this, you know, it's dealer's choice. Either way you go, you can get away with it. You know, because at the end of the day, this is a made-up ship. You can do what you want, and as long as you're trying to stay true to the ship and it feels like the ship and it looks like the ship, you can get away with little things like that. And somebody asked me on the Discord what I do to work on areas that they don't show, and like, in all honesty, that's a great question to ask, because it's something that I come across all the time when I'm doing my builds. I might actually even do an episode directly on that, just to have it out. But you know, you're going to reach a point when you're building these things, regardless of what the ship is, that there's going to be a room that you're going to come across that you want to build, or a section of the ship, and they just never showed it on the show. So I mean, you kind of have to wing it and use the area that you have around you as almost as a starting point, and whether that's looking at your design cues for your interior, reference material for other starships and other types of builds, You know, it's crazy. Like when they did engineering for the Enterprise in the 2009 Star Trek, they literally went to a Budweiser brewery and they used the brewery as a stand-in for engineering. Now, that's not necessarily what I would have done. But my point is that you can use real-world reference materials in those cases to come up with different ideas, whether that's using power plants or nuclear power plants, or maybe another great reference to use is modern aircraft carriers and things like that. Um, these are all things that can kind of maybe give you not a direct idea of what you're going to do, but at least give you a hint of a reference in the direction that you can go in. And then at that point, it's just a matter of taking that idea and then also taking in consideration that you're building within Star Trek, and then also the ship that you're currently working on. When you kind of mix all three of those together, you can kind of get the direction that you need to go in. Because remember, it's always important, at least for me anyway, when I'm building these things, to try to maintain that identity of the ship that you're making. And as long as you can maintain that identity, and it feels like the Enterprise D in this case, it'll make it a lot easier for you to wing it in areas where they don't have a set design. Concept art is another thing that you can hit up, to be honest with you. Concept art, fan art, it's almost all fair game. The easiest ship in Star Trek is always going to be Kirk's Enterprise, because that's the one ship that we've got the most of between all the movies and the shows and everything. Every other ship, you know, if you hit the Enterprise D, Voyager, the Defiant, Deep Space Nine, Enterprise NX-01, these are going to be the other easier ones to make. When we start venturing out of that with ships that weren't referenced on the shows, then it's going to be a little bit harder to do this stuff. And then when you do at that point, and that's when you start building or borrowing from other ships to fill in the blanks for that ship. So what you could do basically at that point, like perfect example, an Excelsior class. What would the interior on an Excelsior class look like? To be honest with you, it probably wouldn't be that far off from a Constitution class. You know? The interiors on these ships, some of them are probably very similar, but then they're going to vary depending on what type of ship it is. Like in the Enterprise D's case, you know, you can see that there's a lot of recreation areas on this ship, and that's because there's 1,000 families living on board. A Constitution class is more of like an exploratory. I don't want to. Military vessel is not the word to use, but it definitely has elements of that, or like a submarine. And then, you know, Voyager's more of science. So I mean, every ship, you know, they all have their own identity, and I'm telling you, once you identify those, it starts to make it a little bit easier to do your ships. Now we're working on the next section of our ship, you know, because I'm only going to be doing one side of detail. So everything that we've just done for the registration, you need to make sure that you're doing that for both your pylons. So now we're on the inside of our pylon, and the gray lines that we have coming up, we're kind of stretching them out a little bit, even though I just used the wrong color on that one. Yeah, I'm not quite sure how I feel about that darker color. I think what we're working on right now, we are going to slightly make some adjustments to here. Yeah, because this whole piece that I'm basically stretching out, I didn't think it was long enough. It looked weird basically cutting off right where the curve starts on the pylon. So I'm trying to blend it in a little bit more with the gray and with the slightly darker gray and then the lighter gray. But I'm not sure that adding in that strip of the darker in the middle there was the way to go. It doesn't look that bad right now, but we also don't have much lighting on it either. So what we're going to try to do now is to bring it up just a little bit more than what we have it. And I'm using the wrong color. I need to go to white concrete. There we go. The height looks good. So we're going to do the same thing to the other side. We just might have to make an adjustment to the pattern itself. Again, just making sure that we're following our basic rules. You do one thing on one side, do it on the other. And I think I need to have a rule added in with the sea lanterns. I'm sorry about that. I've been trying to make a conscious effort to make a point that I always have enough lighting, but sometimes it can be easy to forget that, especially when you're in the moment of building. It can become very easy to forget to add that extra lighting in. One of the things I'm actually messing with right now in relation to Minecraft is that I've been toying with moving my builds over to PC just so I can do a little bit more. And I'm actually glad that I've been messing with that, because what I was ultimately going to do, I was getting ready to build Voyager on one of the worlds I had made with ray tracing. And I'm glad that I didn't, because I brought in a fence or something and it completely crashed my game. So I was like, okay, I'm like kind of happy that I made this mistake now rather than starting to build the ship and coming in across this problem later on. So I think what I might end up doing, I think I'm still going to build on PC, but I don't know if I'm going to do a ray tracing map. I think it's just going to be on a regular world on PC, just so I can always have access to it, and also I'll be able to actually share my worlds, which will be pretty cool. Anyway, we're going to be shifting gears here. We're done with our work on our pylons. Now we're going to be moving on to the rear torpedo launcher of the ship. Again, you know, this is one of those, you know, and I'll say it's a very important area of the ship, even though there's only probably like a handful of times that they even use the rear torpedo launcher on the Enterprise D. Just the fact of how Star Trek Generations plays out, the rear torpedo launcher is a pretty vital area of the ship, because again, we're tapping into those moments that play out in the shows and movies. And when you start missing these things, that's when your builds can start to fall apart a little bit, because these are the first things that people are going to be connecting to when they think about the shows and movies. Like, okay, I'm like, I remember that the rear torpedo, that was towards the end of Generations, where Picard blew up where Riker blew up the bird of prey. They had that very dramatic shot, slow motion shot of the Enterprise D firing the single shot out of the rear, and it slowly just makes its way over to the bird of prey and blows it up. Very iconic moment. But again, you know, we're playing to that. This is why we want to have this moment here, because this is something that was very iconic in the movie that people are going to remember. So I'll make sure that we add this element in as well. We got a gray one right there, and one on each side. That'll look pretty good because then we'll have just enough black coming out to where it looks like the picture. Even though in the picture, this line is going horizontally instead of vertical, I think that I want to go back to it just for one. Stop messing with me on. There we go. So we can actually pause it for a second. No, but I don't think that that's really a deal breaker for me because one of the things that we're trying to maintain here, and if you look at the screenshot to the right, is that the torpedo launcher is only as big as this middle strip that we have right here. And I could have maybe went two more over or one more over on each side to match that lineup. But it's still like, even that what we have, it matches it, even though that line on here is going vertically. It's a very petite addition to the ship, just like it is here. Less is more, and that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to call it a day with that. But that looks perfect. I love that little detail in the back of the ship. It totally helps to make it pop way more than what we have going on right now. Just that little tiny detail right there. And again, you know, none of these details by themselves are going to add up or going to do much when you start adding them up together over a period of time. This is when they start to make the most impact. Alright, so now we're going to focus on our front torpedo launcher. This area needs some work. In order to do that, we're going to have to make, I don't want to say that we're going to be changing our neck, and we're not. We're just going to be making an ever so slight adjustment to it to accommodate the changes that we're going to make to the front of the torpedo launcher. Now, this is a great screenshot. The screenshot that I have up right now, and I've been talking about this, that I found pictures of a toy of the Enterprise D. And sometimes when you find toys, you can get some great reference material out of them. If I hadn't lost my save file on the Enterprise D, one of the things I was planning on messing with was, see how we have like this kind of very basic Aztecing here on the sides of the neck. This was something I was actually going to try to replicate. The only downside of it is that with this toy, this area of the neck was really the only place that had it. Everywhere else it had like red pinstriping and extra things like that that weren't necessarily on the Enterprise D, but we ended up taking it anyway to use on the build. But this is, you know, goes right into, sometimes, you know, look at toys of the reference material if you can find them, because sometimes they'll give you some great reference material to go off of. It may not look like it, but this specific area that we're at right now in the ship, we've got quite a bit of work to do with it, because once we're done with updating the front torpedo launcher, we're actually going to be adding in the airlock, which you can see right here. That'll be coming up in future episodes. This is something that I actually recorded, and I think it'll be pretty cool. I'm looking forward to it, that we're going to be adjusting how we get on the ship. Because right now, our main way of getting aboard the Enterprise is via the shuttle bays. But when we add in our shuttle bay doors, we're not going to have a way to get on the ship. So we're going to have to add in those airlocks. Now see, what we're doing right now, I'm actually staying very close to the reference material. But I don't know if you're catching what's happening here. When you look from the left to the right, that we're losing our detail with our gray line or gray outlines here by making it just one solid piece of gray, and it's just kind of blobbing together. Now there's a couple of different things that we can do to try to fix this. We can revert to what we had before with the darker gray outline. We can even use the stone as almost like a detail for the top and bottom, which I think is actually what we're going to end up falling on ultimately. But this is just a perfect example of what I say when Sometimes when you're translating something over from the real world into Minecraft, doesn't always work out all that well. And now, even though we're staying very true to the overall design of the ship, it's not really working out that much. So now we're going to try to bring back some of that detail. We're going to try out a couple of things. First thing we're going to do is try a combination of what we had before with what we're trying to get to. This can be a great starting off point to see what you need to do and kind of try to troubleshoot what you can do to what's the word I'm looking for, to try to bring out the detail in the way that you're trying to bring it out. That's basically what I'm trying to go for. The problem is, on the left side, is that that color is just way too dark. It's not helping the design. Because even on the Enterprise D, the torpedo launcher, when you compare it to like the torpedo launcher of like a Constitution class, it is very simple. It just has a hole and it has that gray strip on either side. But I think that we're going to be able to come up with a pattern here that's going to work out pretty well. Yeah, and don't get me wrong, even that, it doesn't look bad. That's the idea that we're trying to get across. See, having that darker gray outline. Now when we zoom out, the gray doesn't get lost in the rest of the ship. Because if we just had that gray there without the darker gray outline of it, it would blend in with the rest of it, and you wouldn't see this beautiful detail that we have going on here. So that's the main purpose why we're going to be messing with this area right now, because as we zoom out, if we just have it in the gray, we're going to lose it. So we've got enough done that we can ditch our reference material. We can just go full screen now, and we know what we're trying to get to. It's just a matter of getting there. And the best way to do that is just troubleshoot. Try out a couple of different designs and see what works. Now that doesn't look bad at all. If I were to keep the current color palette that we have, now that we've taken out basically a straight block in the front and turned it into a crosshair, that matches the pattern a little bit more and it looks just a little bit more natural. But the problem that I'm having now is, again, I'm just going to go right back to that darker line. It's not really fitting. So we're going to switch to a different color now. The stone slab. The stone slab still has that gray, but it's not as dark as the darker gray. See, and this is the hitch that you're going to come into when you're dealing with anything other than mods for Minecraft. We've only got a handful of half slabs that we can use. So ideally, what I would do first was try to actually use the same color here that we have in the middle of this gray. But I think what would happen is that we'd have the same problem, is that it would be the gray, and as we zoom out, it would get lost in the detailing of the rest of the ship. So I'm basically going to try to flip it now, where we have white on the center and then the gray strip on the outside, and see how that looks. See, now having that gray strip, it really brings out the outline of our torpedo launcher that carries back through the neck. And it looks a little bit more petite, which is a good thing, because it's all about perspective. You make things look bigger on the outside, or if you make some things look a little bit smaller on the outside, it can actually make the ship look bigger. This is a perfect example that we want our torpedo area here to be as petite as we possibly can, because the bigger that we make it, thickness wise, the smaller it's going to make the rest of the ship look. That's not looking too bad. I almost missed the crosshair that I had in the front. I've gone back to the square outline, which is maybe a little bit truer to how the model looks of the real Galaxy class. But for the purpose of my pattern that I have going on here with the model, that crosshair front for the torpedo might be the way to go. But the thickness of it, that's perfect. It's just a matter at this point of coming up with the right color combination and the right front of our torpedo launcher to make it work. Other than that, the rest of the ship is really starting to come together. We've still got a little bit of work. I think we're going to be hitting up our deflector dish one more time to add a little bit better curve to it. We won't be getting to that today, but that's really the main thing after this at this point that we have to tackle. Yeah, see, I don't know if I like that in the front now, because now we lose the outline that we have for the torpedo. And now we're going to go right back to the crosshair that I was saying before. See, this, again, you know, doesn't necessarily match how the real ship looks, but it matches our pattern. And that's, I think, the most important part right now, is making sure that our patterns match. And I think that looks a little bit better than what we had before. That looks pretty good. Looks very petite. Makes the ship look huge now, more so than it was before. All these little details are going to help sell the size of the ship, because remember, we're only building a half-size Galaxy class. So our main goal here on the outside is to make this thing look bigger than it actually is. All these little details start to add up. But I think that definitely adds to it. Yeah, that's looking fantastic. I'm very happy with the progress that we're making on the Enterprise D. I still can't believe that we built this whole thing out. We still have just a little bit of ways to go on this tutorial, but I think that's going to wrap us up today. I just want to thank you all again for tuning in today's episode, and if you haven't, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, helping me in supporting the channel. I can't thank you enough for that. New subscribers, don't forget to hit notifications on so you get notified when those new videos drop. And speaking of new videos, be sure to check out my new Minecraft episodes dropping Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. Got the hiccups and a burp at the same time while I was recording. But anyway, also new subscribers, be sure to double check, make sure you're subscribed. I've noticed an issue with YouTube. Sometimes you can subscribe and it will totally unsubscribe you to that channel. So want to make sure that you double check for that. If you have any questions regarding today's episode, be sure to drop a comment on Discord or my YouTube. Definitely love hearing from everybody. But yeah, I think that's going to wrap us up today. I just want to thank everybody again for tuning in today's episode. I hope everybody has a happy and safe week. And of course, what did you make in Minecraft today? Let me know in the comments section, and I'll catch you guys in the next episode.